I was actually planning on going into the Marines originally, but I got to MEPS and they said I was flat-footed. Even though I was,
Ah, you're going to the men's department and had to change, huh?
yeah. So Navy guy comes over and starts talking with me. He's like, "We can get you a waiver." Let me tell you about this nuclear power program. It's like, all right,
And they're protecting their company. I don't blame them for that. They're protecting their company. They don't want to hire the wrong guy.
yeah,
But I'm like, oh, I can't get that, and I can't get this entry level. Where do I fit, man? Like, where do I fit, right? So you go down that self-doubt road, which is dangerous and tough for sure. I mean, I remember in one interview, you're way overqualified for this. What's the deal? you know, and it was, I don't have an ego, and I need to provide for my family. And I'm not attaching my past experience to what I can do. Just let me show you what I can do. I didn't get that job either, man.
yeah.
I was
It's
like, okay. What's up, man? You got a new baby in the house, trying to work. Like, how'd you get into this situation?
Man, well, honestly, like I see a lot of people talk about, just kind of fell into it. I spent the last 10 years, as operations manager, doing, all types of different, stuff like that. And then, the oil field started dropping. I was responsible for Laredo to Dallas, right before I got out, but everything started, rig cards going down, things dropping. And I was one of the ones that decided to take the voluntary layoff. I had a couple guys under me that um, I felt like wouldn't have as many, you know, opportunities, as many chances. Not bragging, but my experience level, seemed like it might have been easier to bounce into something else. So got out and got back into the work field, trying to figure out something different. Applying for tons of different jobs, and then realizing there's thousands of people just like me now. So needed to find, some type of profession where I could get a certification, a license to, kind of stand out, to at least, shrink the pool of, applicants.
Mm-hmm.
One of the salesmen I used to work with, he got into real estate. He's a realtor in New Braunfels now. Mentioned it. We talked about it. A couple other people I knew, did the same thing. Sounded like something I'd want to get into, and just went through with it. Did the did the licensing, did the pre licensing education. Talked with James. I found him through LinkedIn. He told me a little bit about New American Funding, and then here I am. Nowhere I would have expected, ending up. Not the job, so to speak, that I expected myself to be doing, but all of my skill sets, seem to match up. It's just, a different end goal, as far as, what type of product you're delivering, what type of problems you're solving. And so just, realigning myself to that. I feel like, so far, I'm enjoying it.
Mm-hmm. Then what? So it was a LinkedIn recruiting post that you replied to, or we reached out to you?
I actually found, so we had considered moving to the, like Austin, Round Rock area.
Mm-hmm.
We're wanting to, new baby on the way, wanted to, kind of look into a different area besides Corpus Christi. Um, and so I was looking primarily, and because, the job market was, a bit, the opportunities were a little bit higher in that area. So started looking there, applying at, various different places, and then, started seeing more and more, the LinkedIn jobs, the postings were, uh, mortgage officer, branch manager for mortgage company, things like that. So it's like, okay, well, obviously this industry is still doing well.
Mm-hmm.
More opportunities there as well. And so I found a few different job postings, and I ended up finding out they were for ILA positions. But digging through a few until I found, okay, this one's actually got a contact associated with it. And so that's how I found James and started messaging him direct and,
Okay.
just asking him about it.
Gotcha. Did you, when you were exiting the military, did you mess with any of the LinkedIn, or did they have any of that like training for you, or you just did that because you knew it was effective?
I I started a LinkedIn last year. I didn't. I I had always thought of it, and this was a bad perception on my end. I had always thought of it as more like another type of monster, like a job board kind of. I
Hmm.
didn't really understand like the full potential, as far as the networking, information sharing, and that may have been more of an evolution of it, over the years, but no, I just started it, and so now, like I've grown, I've got like, 1,600 some connections, in a year. But, initially I was just like, okay, well, this is another place to look for jobs. Now I see it's like, nope, totally underestimated, what, what this position was for.
Yeah, you're crushing it there. Now, what'd you do before the oil field? So, did you get out of the Navy and go straight to the oil field?
So I was in the Navy from 2002 to 2009.
Okay.
I decided, like I did 5 years, on the sub. I didn't really want to do, the shore duty and continue on. And I was, kind of at a pivotal point, because once you pass, halfway to retirement, then it's like, ooh, what do you do?
Hmm.
So that to me was, I need to make a decision. And I decided I wanted to get out, because there were, there's so much more, in the civilian sector and things like that. What I didn't realize was that was, what we now call the Great Recession. So, the job opportunities and things that I had lined up, all turned into, kind of hiring freezes and things like that. So it was really a matter of, again, just trying to decide, what is stable, as far as, an industry, what can I get into, what can I do, and where. So, of course I had, several that, I'd spoke with that were interested for when I went through my EAOS and all that. But then it was okay. Now we're in a waiting
What's
period.
EOAOS?
End of active obligated service.
Oh, okay.
So
Man, look
once
at you, technical guy.
yeah, but, so once I got finished and once I was essentially free and clear in that sense, then it was like, okay, well, I thought I had several landing spots, but now what?
So that
And
was
so
'09.
yep,
So you joined in? Did you join in '98 or '99?
2002. I did 7.
2002.
Yeah.
7 years. Okay. All right. So 2002, right after 9/11, or what?
Well, right after high school, actually.
Okay.
So I was in that delayed entry program, when 9/11 happened, and a
Mhm.
lot of the discussion, I was already planning on joining at that time before that, and then it was a matter of, okay, like, do we still want to, go through with this? The recruiters, everyone was, kind of, double checking with everybody at that, and you know, didn't didn't dissuade me, so
Mhm. And
decided to go
you
through.
knew you were going into the Navy then too? So before?
I was actually planning on going into the Marines originally, but I got to MEPS and they said I was flat-footed, and said that wasn't gonna work for me. Even though I was,
Ah, you're going to the men's department and had to change, huh?
yeah. So it was they said, oh, you couldn't handle the physical aspects. Even though I was at the time doing the PRTs and stuff.
Mhm.
Perfect for their standards. So it was like, okay, well, and then Navy guy comes over and starts talking with me. He's like, "We can get you a waiver. Let me tell you about this nuclear power program." It's like, all right, started talking about that, and you know, next thing I know, I'm on a submarine operating a nuclear power plant. So,
Dude, so you went immediately into subs?
well, it was 2 years of school we had to go through, through to make sure that we had the training and stuff like that. So I did 2 years out in Charleston, South Carolina, and then the next 5 I was on a fast tech out of San Diego, California.
That you didn't go to Virginia at all for their nuclear stuff?
Mm-mm.
Okay. We toured the facility up in DC, I guess years ago. Super fascinating stuff, man. What's it like being on a sub?
Um,
What was your first
what's
experience when let me back up before you get to that. When they said submarine, what did you immediately think?
well, the first thing, on that, you have to volunteer for it.
Right.
There's no you can get, for us in the nuclear field, the options at the time were aircraft carrier or submarine, because that was where the nuclear power plants were. So it was, either go on an aircraft carrier with, 5,000-6,000 people, or go on a submarine, 100 to 130 people, and pros and cons, you had to weigh it out, of course, the living conditions, if you could handle, the mentality of, like, I'm going on something that's designed to sink, and we're all going to hope it comes back up, versus, the aircraft carriers and things like that. So, the first time you go out to sea, like, of course, like, you're just, you know, uh, extremely anxious, I guess would be, a good way to put it.
It sounds like an understatement, dude.
I mean, and it is, it's something that, that everyone, of course, like, you get paired up with, a sponsor, someone that's, experienced to kind of, serve as like your mentor, your guide. And we all, did our best, to prepare, but it's something that you really just have to, you have to go through it to, be able to truly, like, come to terms and grasp, like, all right, this is happening, preparation, talking, explaining, like, this is what, is going to happen, this is, what you're going to see, what you're going to hear, because, once you start to hear, like, you see it in the movies and stuff, the groaning, of the metal as the, the pressure is hitting it and stuff. And that's, it can be extremely unnerving, but just,
do you spend
do it.
time in a submarine prior to going out? I mean, as part of the training, are you okay? Hey, we're going to go down 100 feet in this sub, right, and do this activity?
No,
Nothing.
no,
Just like, all right, here you go.
Yep. It's sink
how
or
long
swim. You crash course, brother.
How long was your first trip?
It's a good question. Normally for us, at the time, it would be, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because there's different, kind of, operation schedules. So for us, there was a lot of the training exercises, things we would do, just off the coast, support, anti-submarine warfare, things like that. So it could be, a couple weeks out at sea. The longest I ever did was 2 months. So 62 days. I went, no sunlight,
Submerged.
Yep, just out there. Groundhog Day. Living under the fluorescent lights. And just doing it.
Is that a long time? Like, did you notice it was a long time, or you're like, 62?
For us, it was, just because normally that, we would have, so our deployment was usually 6 months, but, we would have, port stops, pick up parts, swap out personnel. If we had, ship riders that, would come on board, pick up, we call it brief stop for parts of personnel. So we pick up, like fresh food, things of that nature. So 62 days straight was kind of a bit of a stretch, but by that point, we were already 3 months out at sea, so it's easier. You start to kind of lose track of, exactly how long it's been. Of course you're always, kind of counting down, in a sense, but the feeling, doesn't really start to weigh on you until, you've been gone a couple months.
And you pop back up to the world, and you're like, oh
yeah. I mean, white as a sheet of paper, because you haven't had any sunlight. You all come out, like blinded by, like the midday sun.
Really?
It's nuts. Even now, like, I feel like my eyes, like, shifted, I can't go outside without sunglasses. It just seems so bright. Everything is so different for me.
Do you
And
know
I don't know if it's psychological or not, but it's killer.
is there like what are the other effects, man? Can you feel the depth at all, or you have no clue how deep you are when you're in there?
No, essentially we're like a plane. So that's the easiest way that I can describe it. Because we maintain like our internal pressure
Hmm.
to just the same as cabin pressure for airplanes.
Hmm.
So we don't really notice it. As much as in that sense. And that's a good thing, right? We want to keep that outside pressure outside. We don't want to deal with it inside. The only thing that that starts to get affected is we you know we recycle our air.
Hmm.
So if we're out for extended period of time and we have to stay submerged, then we don't get to recycle with fresh air. And so we have oxygen generators. We have oxygen candles that we can light off to refresh the air. But you'll notice in the like smoking sections and stuff, like the flame will be like an inch or so above the lighter, and it's like, all right, we're a little low on oxygen. Everybody's starting to kind of act lethargic. Like, you need to bump that up a bit, get
So
everybody's mood back up.
you still have smoking sections in that thing when you're submerged that long?
Yep,
Get the
we have.
fuck out of here.
Yeah, we have it's they're called CO2 scrubbers, right? So it's amine just the same as like gas production plants. They pull all the impurities out of the gas. We use the same thing to purify our air. So as we're breathing, we're expelling carbon dioxide. So that's something that has to get purged so we don't all poison ourselves just by breathing. And that also filters out smoking and things like that. So
So is it describe the smoking room to me?
well, that depends. That's boat to boat. It's not a particular room, so to speak, as much as it's just an area where they'll say, okay, here, if you guys want to congregate here, it's not going to affect people that don't want to be around it. So for us, that area was in what we called Shaft Alley. So it was at the very very aft end of the boat, the back end of the boat, and so we were hovering over where you could see like the shaft seals. So as the the shaft, the propeller, the screw, all that, we're sitting there watching it as it's propelling us. We're hovering over that, having a cigarette. I'm just kind of watching it go by, and we could see how fast it was spinning. We could kind of guess how many RPMs we're rotating at, and things like that. And it was a spot where about 4 or 5 people could kind of stand around, and that was always the place to get the good gossip. You know, it was where everybody's feeling a little bit more relaxed. And you know go back there with your coffee, have a smoke. Talk about what's going on. Figure out what's happening. Stuff like that.
What's the silent drive in Hunt for Red October called? In my mind, I'm envisioning Hunt for Red October back where they're shooting and you're back in there smoking.
I haven't
You
seen
remember
that
what
one.
that's called? You know what movie I'm talking about. You got it. You're a
Yeah,
submarine guy, man.
yeah. Honestly, down Periscope, brother. That
What?
yeah, that one is more realistic as far as like the antics and stuff we would do. Hunt for Red October, I'll have to revisit that. So
It's called the
silent drive.
Caterpillar. It's called the Caterpillar Drive.
Mm. Well, and then again, all right. So here's another aspect on that. Okay, so Hunt for Red October, that one, the USS Alabama. Okay, that was a what we called a boomer. Okay, it was a ballistic missile sub.
Hmm.
Whereas I was on a fast attack. So we had there's two different styles. Similar design, of course. Externally, but internals were could be very different. Their purpose was pick a hole in the ocean and go sit in it. Whereas we were more to show presence. We could actually like visit foreign ports and things like that. It was more of a hey, we are around versus you don't know where they are.
Gotcha.
So I'll look into that. I'll get back with you on that. Because I'm interested. Because there are a lot of things that get portrayed accurately, but some of it it's like, all right, yeah, that made a good movie.
I'd like a full report. It's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
But if it
Here,
sucks, don't tell me. Just tell me it's accurate. Bottom line, I want you to watch it and tell me it's extremely accurate.
note taken.
All right. So you're, I guess, sailing around the world on this fast attack sub.
Mhm.
Seems like a dream being submerged for 60 days, not seeing anybody, smoking in a confined space with low levels of oxygen.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to the smoking before we move forward. Is it cigarettes only? I'm a cigar guy. Am I going to be, if I'm ever in the situation to be in a fast attack sub and I go to the smoking section with a cigar, am I going to be like asked to leave?
No, I mean, the only thing about that is, whether or not with the workload that we had, if you would have time to, actually sit and properly enjoy it. That was the only thing that, that stopped most of us. I mean, we'd bring cigars and stuff too. Sometimes we would do like, we call steel beach picnics, right? So we'd, surface, out in the middle of nowhere, have a swim call. People would hang out, topside, look around for miles and miles and see, nothing but, whatever sea, whatever ocean you're in, and hang out, have a swim, as part of, a little bit of R&R to give a break to the, to the daily, the daily life if we had time. But cigars, wouldn't be any different. Just like I said, we were on 18-hour days, so we would spend 6 hours on watch, 6 hours, you know, off going where we would do, maintenance, what have you. And then 6 hours would be the oncoming period where typically we would, try to get, rest during that period so we could restart the 18-hour day. Depending on what was going on, maintenance could overlap. It could be running drills. We ran a lot of emergency drills to make sure that we could respond quickly. Firefighting, flooding drills, um, equipment failures, things like that to make sure that our response was immediate and precise. So drills were constantly being ran. And so that once you get through all of that, sometimes I know for a few months, I was basically where I had about an hour to 2 hours a day to myself. Where that was my rest period with the workload that I had. And so you start prioritizing. It's like, do I want to do this? Do I have time to do this, or is this something I want to take on? And it really just depended on the collateral duties you had that you took on and what was going on at the time. It wasn't always like that. Sometimes you could have 12 hours where you didn't really have anything you needed to do. But again, it was all dependent on your personal workload.
What's the gym like under there?
Mm, let's see, improvised. So there wasn't really a space per se to have a gym. And so we would, block off a particular section, get a bunch of ratchet straps and put, a treadmill where it wouldn't be terribly in the way. You could still get around it if you needed to, for, like I said, firefighting, normal watch standing, whatever. And then, that would be where you could use that. A lot of the piping was very sturdy, so you'd see guys doing, pull-ups on, some of the piping in certain areas, lots of places where you could, stretch out and be able to do, push-ups, sit-ups to, try and maintain the physical fitness. But, as far as, having a lot of like, weightlifting equipment, things like that, that was a lot tougher because that's more equipment that you have to make sure is, what we call stowed for sea. So that if, something was to happen, if we had to take, a hard angle, whatever, then it wouldn't become a missile hazard, so some of it, you could, find ways to go about doing, but a lot of it was just, using the environment around you the best you could.
Dang, man. All right. So there you are, push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, likely in the same smoking section. and
Fairly close.
decide fairly close and decide, hey man, this isn't for me. What happened there, man? Walk me through your mindset.
Really, it was just the opportunities that were presented beyond the service. So it was you know in a year period, you'd spend the majority of your time out at sea, which is great for your career, but it doesn't really leave much room for life outside the service.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what ultimately felt like was my driving goal to exit. I loved what I did. Absolutely. I still get nostalgic and watch old videos and things of that nature, and a lot of it stays with me. Even to this day. Certain words will bring back like actions and stuff that we used to take based on hearing it. But it was hard to, and I saw this in a lot of my shipmates, the personal life, the work life balance, that was extremely difficult on them. And you know absolutely inspired by the ones that could do it and survive that, and still have healthy meaningful relationships. But I wanted to kind of get to a point where I could pursue that outside of the need to constantly be gone and miss out on life events and things like that.
Home life. Were you married at the time when you got out?
Nope. But that was a choice for me. I wanted to, you know I didn't want to be in that possibility. And so the majority of my time I just focused on work and maintained. I stayed single. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even you know I didn't even entertain the opportunity.
Yeah, so my wife and I dated for 5 years, long distance, 8.5 hours apart.
Mm.
So I joined when I was 22, right after college, and it was great because we were 8.5 hours apart, which meant exactly what you were talking about. There was no work-life balance because I only saw her on the weekends, and that was, almost every weekend, every other weekend. Flights were super easy at the time. It was $100 to fly from Nashville to Michigan, where she was at. So it was ideal. I can't imagine, being in your 20s out to sea, trying to balance, learning how to be a sailor or pilot in my case, and then have to worry about coming home and trying to balance it all, man. I saw folks struggle with it. I was like, we're just going to focus on being focused on work during the week, man.
Yeah.
So I get that, but then it does take a toll. I mean, when I got married, I got out of operations for that reason. So similar mindset. I totally get it.
Yeah.
Now you're from Texas originally, right?
New Orleans, Louisiana.
New Orleans. That's right. All right.
Hmm.
So you get out, walk me through. You're like, all right, man, I'm getting out. Enough's enough. Like, then what?
Well, so my family had moved, after Katrina. Most of my family moved to San Antonio.
Okay.
So got out and decided wanted to be closer by them. So initially landed in San Antonio. Large city. Thought there might be plenty of opportunity. Because a lot of my old shipmates and stuff, they end up in like Virginia, things of that nature
Mm-hmm.
for the data centers and stuff like that they're working. Um, Stayed there, a couple months. You know, kind of bounced around, tried to find like temporary work, what have you, to just to kind of get my foot in the door. And ultimately, at that point, ended up moving to Denver after that. Found out, that Denver of all places had, a few more opportunities for, plant work and stuff like that I wanted to get into. So, knew a few people up there, traveled, the 14-hour distance up that way and
What kind of
started hunting
plant
for
work?
work. There was a lot of, so in like river or a rifle, there's a lot of like gas turbine work, a lot of like
Okay.
gas production facilities, things like that. And mining activities. There are a lot of industries that had the same kind of quality assurance needs that I was accustomed to. And so and that was early 20s. I was, kind of carefree and just kind of winging it. And I thought it'd be, neat to just pick up and roll. And so went up there, and of course, like ended up just finding, odd jobs and stuff like that. I did appliance repair for a little while because, that was one of my duties as an electrician was, working on, various things on the boat. So that was an easy, troubleshooting experience for a little while.
So now you're about a year out, and you've not only bounced around San Antonio for a few months, now you're living in Denver for a few months. Like, I mean, it's kind of the elephant in the room, man.
I was a drifter, man.
Okay. Were you like a happy drifter though, or like,
Oh,
man,
I was loving it.
Life sucks. Okay, so you were like,
I was loving
man,
it.
I'm free, dude. All right.
Yeah, at one point, so I had a, I had a car that I bought in California. I had Colorado license plate on it. I had, Texas driver's license. My phone number was from, Mississippi, and I ended up moving to Louisiana for work. Like I was all over the place.
Dude, you're a cop's dream to pull over, man.
A
former sailor with none of his shit matching. Perfect.
Yeah. I felt like Rambo. I was just drifting,
and probably, man. Not gonna lie, man. Probably some alcohol in that car.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Stuffed away in some pocket somewhere, I'm sure. But no, it was just, at that point, joining the service and going into the unknown like that, it really did increase my confidence level, to where it's like, hey, like you don't know what's going to happen, but you'll figure it out. So on that, it was just a matter of let me find somewhere I want to land and want to stay.
Okay.
So just going around, what have you. I didn't have a huge tie, to any particular place. It was more or less, where can I make it work? Where can I make myself, feel, comfortable and enjoy myself? And and that ended up, taking me all over the place. But, it felt like, it was, something I kind of needed to do, and wanted to do. And then, just, the military aspect, you get used to, it's been about, 2 years. Like, I feel like I need to, make a move, need to make a transition because, we're so constantly, like transferring duty stations, going, out on deployments, always, moving, that finding somewhere to be stationary was kind of difficult at first, so it was also, fulfilling that like internal, need that I thought I still had.
To move, you mean?
Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of that what's next, right? I think that's one of the things that we forget about in the military is you never enjoy the now. Because you're always planning, right? You're planning for that catastrophe. You're planning for that next, trip out at sea. You're planning for that next move. You're like, okay, well, I'm in E4 now. All right, if I do this, then I can go to the board. Then I can do this, right? And it's like it's ingrained in you every day. That's what you're doing. And then you get out, and people are like, no, just you do you, man. Do this. You're like, well, for how long? What's next?
Right.
I don't know. You could do that forever. You're good at it. Like that. I don't want to do that forever.
Yeah. Where's my structure? Where's my growth? Because likewise, like so we called it PRD, projected rotation dates, right? So we understood that everyone was going to be on board for a certain period of time, and then you'd have prospective gains, prospective losses to maintain continuity. And so you're progressing up the rungs of the ladder, and then it's like, okay, now it's time for you to go. And then we've got someone else that's starting at the bottom and working their way up, to where you always have a healthy level of seniority and a healthy level of growth, to and new sailors to build into. And so then that you kind of get accustomed to, like you said, that's the structure. Like I spend X amount of time at this point, then I go to this point, and then I go to this point, and it's comparing that, built in, structure as compared to, like you said, the climbing the corporate ladder, where, it's not guaranteed. It's not expected. It's,
Mm-hmm.
completely, like self-driven. If you want to grow, and you show potential, then you can. It's not required of you, and then, once you start wrapping your head around like, okay, that's how this works now, it's completely
Mm-hmm.
different, feeling, you know, I know several, I know plenty that, would stay exactly where, they were because that's, they didn't feel the incentive to grow. They didn't feel the incentive to try to take on additional responsibility to, you know, have professional growth,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a very odd, kind of mentality, but it's, just because so much of the other side is ingrained in me just naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And, always learn, like not just yours, but, what's the next step, constantly be learning about that as well. What it takes to, if you have to move into that, if you have to, fill in, help out, that type of mentality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were very, especially on submarines because we're limited on personnel, even from, the beginning, in every situation, someone that's, brand new is, a liability of sorts. Okay. That's a given. But, when you consider there's, 100 people on a submarine, the ratio of, what we called qualified individuals, people that had their, their warfare pins, and you knew you could trust to operate, in,
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day circumstances, as the ratio becomes, heavier, on the newer personnel side, then the potential for, disaster increases, because, this person may choke, may not have, the the fortitude, if something, legitimately happened. That's why we, practiced, ran drills so often,
Mm-hmm.
or may not have the level of knowledge, necessary to, be able to help, if, you had a catastrophe. And so that was where, it was constantly put on us, brand new, if you're not working, you've got a book in your face, you're studying,
Mm-hmm.
you're focusing, you're learning, you're constantly, working on making yourself more valuable to being part of ship's crew.
How many times out at sea is like the basics or the basis for where you think somebody's proficient? It's like one trip and you're like, you learn enough on one, like you're pretty good. Is it 60 days? What is it, man? Or is it just obviously it's dependent on the person, but what's kind of the level where you're like, that guy's good, kind of no matter what?
To get to, what we call like your final, like your senior watch station,
Mm-hmm.
like, because we had multiple levels, of growth, different, positions that would be filled, as they, transition through their seniority, you know, looking at about a year and a half, 2 year period.
At sea.
Mostly, yeah, because a lot of it, has to be, are actions that have to be observed. Everything that they did was, under observation, evaluated constantly. So it would have to be at sea. That way you could actually go through and actually perform a lot of the actions. So some, we call them, like, hot runners, like, could get through much faster. It all
Mm-hmm.
depended on, how quickly you were able to, prove the level of knowledge, but then also prove, reliability under stress, which
Mm-hmm.
was, another huge, reason why, we went through the things we did.
That,
Yearly, we have to go through what we call the operational reactor safeguards exam,
mm-hmm.
to make sure that as a crew we could operate safely, and we would bring, you know, full bird captains. They would come and evaluate every aspect that we were doing, and that would be, a 3 day process where, you're basically awake the entire time. That you're constantly going through, examination, written examination, you know, actual interviews, running drills, observed maintenance, and they want it to be in a stressful, uncomfortable environment, That way, it's, okay, this is how you would react under stress, under pressure, because, that could be, what we would have to be under. And
is there a difference between East and West Coast guys?
So on that, yes and no. Okay, operationally, no. The what we do for the work, exactly the same. West Coast, it's so when you pick your duty station, it's your dream sheet, right? You say, oh, I want to get stationed here, 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 whatever. West Coast, was generally the preferred home ports. Okay, and you think San Diego, California, Hawaii, you know, even Seattle, like those, are more desirable home ports than some people completely dislike Norfolk, Virginia, and things of that nature. But on the other side, if they were East Coast, then they could do med runs. They could go stop at Italy, Spain, England. So it was where do you want to live, and is that more important than the places you could visit? So for myself, West Coast, we went to Guam, Singapore, Japan. Some got to go to Korea. I didn't make Korea. Australia was another option. So it's, what do you want to see, and where do you want to live?
Gotcha.
And then working out that. But operationally, no. We do things exactly the same. There could be some some slight differences, because of course the how soon they could submerge, when the shelf drops off, things like that. But
so it's not like the East Coast captain's coming to evaluate you and he's like, whoa, 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 boys, it's not how we do it.
I heard quite a few stories about the Aloha Fridays and stuff, and I hear Hawaii operates a good bit differently, but aside from that, no.
All right. So kind of moving back to where you're at now. So you bounce around Mississippi. Well, you're kind of a route here. So walk me through your route to Corpus.
So for that, I left San Diego. I went to San Antonio. I was there a few months. Went up to Denver. I was there about a year and a half. And then after that, where'd I go? I went to Arizona for a couple weeks. I was in Phoenix for a couple weeks, seeing what was going on down there. Old shipmate of mine was out that way, and I was actually running from a blizzard. I didn't want to go through. It was going to be like -28, and I was like, my time here is done. Like I'm from the South. I'm not prepared for this.
Yeah.
And then after that, so I heard about a lot of my friends were getting into the oil field. Heard about a huge hiring conference in Virginia. I was working with Orion, the head military headhunters at the time, and they were telling me there was a huge hiring conference in Virginia for oil field up in Pennsylvania for Marcellus Shale. And I said, well, I'm at this point I'm down to like my last $1,000, and I was like, well, like I got to make something shake. I had everything that I cared to keep. I was in the the trunk of my Grand Prix, and I was like, all right, well, where am I going to go now? And, and so I'm thinking, all right, well, I'll travel this way, and I'll make it there for that. I'll join up. If not, what have you. Had a few job interviews. I was on the phone, as I was traveling through. I actually pulled over just outside of El Paso because I was afraid I was going to start losing service once you start going through West Texas. And I had one in Houston that sounded really good to me. So, and it was a oil field, like electrician job. So I decided I was going to visit a buddy of mine up in College Station, and stay the night with him, and then go to that interview. And then come to find out, like they told me everything's in the bag, like everything looked good. You've got the job, you're going to start, in 2 weeks. So, all right. stayed with him, caught up with, an old shipmate of mine, called him, like, hey, like to give me an address, et cetera, to go and, fill out my new hire paperwork. And
Mm-hmm.
they told me that one of their hiring managers actually offered the job to someone else.
Oh, awesome.
And they didn't want to, he wasn't authorized to do that, but they didn't want to, call the guy and tell him he didn't have the job. So instead, they just decided to tell me I didn't have the job. And I was like, well, if that's a roundabout way of saying you just didn't care for my interview, like that's a really weird way to
Just
put
tell
it.
me, man. Just tell me.
I'm pretty thick skinned. I can handle it, and so now, I'm in College Station. I'm in Aggie country, and I'm not really sure where I'm going to move now. So started doing a little bit more odd jobs there, and got in with Grant Pride Co. I was doing heat treatment for drill pipe up there, and it was, that was a good bit of time where, I spent about 2 months in that, and that was like my entrance to the oil field. So I'm working with, 1400 degree, pipe, I'm standing about, 2 feet away from it, all day long. You'd step out in Navasota in the middle of the Texas summer heat for a break because it, felt so much better outside than in there. And then that, once you get in, now it's a lot easier to, to find work. So I got a job opportunity to move back to South Louisiana, and picked up, moved on down. And I know it's crazy, but hey,
So then what?
so there, I'm in Morgan City, Louisiana, which, a lot of people have never heard of the area, but it's big. It was big for, oil field. I was staying in Lafayette, which was about 2 hours, about an hour and a half roughly from where, the job was. And I was in this place called the what was it? It's the Bike Barn Saloon. Okay, so there was this biker bar in Karen Crow, Louisiana, that had, lots behind the bar where people could put, travel trailers, camp trailers and stuff like that. And a buddy of mine was, driving trucks, and he had a camper trailer set up there. So, here I am now, I'm, got a hour and a half, 2 hour commute to work,
Every day, each way.
every day. And I'm living in a camper trailer behind a biker bar, so I'm sure you can imagine I didn't choose to, sleep very often. I was having quite a bit of fun. And then of course, it was long days. So, sometimes it was, I'd leave at, 8, 9 o'clock from work, get back at 11, have to get up at, 3 or 4 to, get back to work on time. And, if something interesting going over, you want to go check it out and see what's happening. And, and just, kind of bounce from there, and eventually, I ended up, once I got, a couple paychecks in, I was, able to, pick up a place to jump into,
Mm-hmm.
Got out of that and, moved into, somewhere that was a little bit easier of a commute. And then, did that, for about 5 years. And then they transferred me from there to Corpus. I wanted to get back closer to, San Antonio for work. And, started out, new guy there, learned, enough about, the process. I started out as the maintenance supervisor for, about 16, 17 people. And, just kind of told them, I was like, I'm here to, help improve, like they already knew what they were doing, but
Mm-hmm.
they needed somebody to help structure a schedule for them, help them organize their time, things like that. So, spending time with them, I got to know all the equipment. I didn't have a clue what any of that stuff did, no, no sense whatsoever of, what their job was, so shadowing them, spending time with them and, learning, this is the turn time for the, the equipment, this particular piece of equipment to get worked on.
Mm-hmm.
All of that helped me get to know, the guys that worked for me. And then also, how the equipment, what the equipment actually did. And, you know, we were able to, kind of implement, more of like a lean type structure, to, organize time, work on, improving turn times, improving schedules, priorities, and that was primarily what I did there.
Put them back on 18-hour days, huh?
Oh man, I was trying to actually take them off of it. Like, it was very common for quite a few of us to be there till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Just
Mm-hmm.
because the workload and or the difficulty of the precision maintenance. A lot of that stuff. It was a very similar mindset. As far as like this, if we don't do this right, someone's life is on the line.
Mm-hmm.
If this equipment fails because we used the wrong screw here, this could kill somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And so my appreciation of that level of detail, based on my experience, was what actually gave me the opportunity to take over as a manager for a job I knew nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the just that fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was another thing that I implemented a lot of, because it's easy for, it was easy for them to see the equipment as, like this is, like a bag of, nuts and screws.
Mm-hmm.
What is it when it's put together? What
Mm-hmm.
is its purpose? And that, helped them understand, like, okay, I need to make, absolutely sure, we put Loctite on these, locking fasteners,
Mm-hmm.
because if this fails, this is what could happen. And so, like, bringing that level of awareness to them, was absolutely, a game changer,
Mm-hmm.
for them and myself, to understand, what all the equipment did.
So what's the common theme here, right? So you go from there. Obviously, oil fields took a bit of a turn, um, impacted everybody, right?
Yeah.
But now you're in finance, helping people buy homes. What's the common theme, kind of amongst everything, that fulfills you?
For me, it's, finding the solution. The main thing that I've always enjoyed was, being involved in a difficult, critical, problem, and then
Mm-hmm.
helping come up with, the best answer for it. So that's what I see, a lot of, it's not necessarily, life threatening, situations now, that I deal with, but it's, extremely, quality of life, and these are, major, financial decisions for people. And, having that type of appreciation that, there are a lot of moving parts. This is why all of these are important. And then, the satisfaction of, coming up with the solution.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what, and of course, I mean, you and I have spoke, I like digging in on requirements. I'm, I'll dig, I'll find, because that's just, that goes but way back, to, like I said, being the new guy, and have on a sub,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you ain't studying, if you're not learning and improving yourself, then you're, detrimental to the team, is the mentality that I still keep, so anything I
Nah,
can do to constantly improve, is what I try to do.
dude, it's crazy the amount of knowledge you have already on this stuff, man. I mean, if there's a regulation, I'm already telling some of the other folks, I'm like, just talk to Mackey. Like, I was like, man, I kind of know. I know ish. I know the direction. But next question, you're going to ask me some super detailed thing. Just go talk to Mackey. Like, I don't know why he knows this weird stuff, but he does.
Yeah, I don't know, call it a gift and a curse, because sometimes it's like, man, like I sit at night sometimes and I think about this stuff, and and I'm like, oh, like last night, we were having a discussion, about that kind of stuff, and I'm like, I found something new, and I'm like, oh my man, like this is game changer for so many people. I got so many to dig back through, just. But it's great, because that, to me means that, I'm providing the highest level of service that I can,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what makes me feel comfortable. In the end, if it's, hey, there's, tried, nothing I can do,
Mm-hmm.
at least I know, I didn't, you know, miss something, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is, where I kind of bring everything back to is, this is the problem, that needs a solution, and I say problem because, it's a puzzle.
Right.
This is the puzzle that needs to be solved. Let's call it that, because it's not necessarily problems anymore, but, and where do the pieces lie? How do you get, to where you want the end goal to be?
Mm-hmm. What's the highest stress job that you've had, kind of looking back on it, right? And not and it's stress for different reasons. Right now, the stress is, hey, man, this person's lighting you up because they're supposed to close, and you've got just a little bit of time, and obviously go back to the fast tech sub days, different sort of stress, right? In the oil fields, clearly kind of life and death. And so I feel like you've just kind of navigated your way to less stressful work, right? Maybe. I don't know. What do you think?
It depends, so on that, um, much less stress as far as, like I said, the critical to life aspect,
Mm-hmm.
because, oil field, submarine, of course, a mistake was, one or multiple lives on the line, whereas now, like, that part is removed. um, but the most stressful, um, I would have to say, you know as crazy as it may sound, but at one point I was doing day labor, so I would go,
Mm-hmm.
you know, 3:30 in the morning, to make sure that I was first in line. I'd be, sitting in front of the, labor ready office to try and, pick something up. Uh, that was actually kind of my most stressful because it was the one point that I really felt a fear of failure. You know, I was, essentially begging at that point for, you know, hey, can I go? I was doing, like broom sweep jobs at construction sites.
What?
Oh yeah, I was all over the place. And it was very humbling. Because it's like, I just went from, I was a supervisor of a nuclear power propulsion plant. I was the third in line, the captain and the executive officer, right? They were, above me as far as like the maintenance that occurred on the sub. There was
Mm-hmm.
no maintenance that happened without my review,
Mm-hmm.
at the end point of my time there. And now I'm, begging somebody to let me hold a push broom, because, I had to kind of dumb down my resume. People would see me as a flight risk. Like, you're applying for, this, electrician job, but are clearly overqualified, and getting them to realize that, yeah, I'm overqualified, but I still need a job. Appreciate my
Mm-hmm.
support while you have it. I could do, so much for you, and I'm willing to do that. But, on the same side, I do understand, their concerns. So what I ended up having to do was start deleting. I can't mention this anymore. I can't mention, you know, a lot of my experience, because
So you went the route of deleting your experience on the nuclear sub.
a lot of it, yeah, as far as like what the level of detail and the level of spirit, of seniority that I reached,
Wow.
because that actually made me more appealing for, the type of positions that were available, around me.
Wow. So why you think you were aiming low or you got forced to aim low? I mean, obviously the drifter and you want to kind of go around a little bit, but was it drifter by choice and you just were happy doing that? Or it was like, man, I did this just long enough that I didn't parlay it and now I'm starting from scratch.
A little bit of it was, you know, drifted by choice, but also like trying to find wherever, the opportunities were. And there
Mm-hmm.
really weren't very many, even dealing with, I was dealing with about 6 or 7 different headhunters. I was on, all the
Mm-hmm.
job boards, looking in, you know, nationwide, essentially. Of course, with some reason, like I had to, at least know someone that could, put me up for a bit, if I went that route, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so, moving from that, it was okay, like now, you know, whereas I just left, essentially an executive position, on the, as far as the hierarchy goes, I was, uh, now I'm moving back to applying for, middle management slash entry level positions. And so, that was, that actually worked against me a lot of times, in that sense. And there was just, for what my skills could easily translate to, that I thought at the time, granted, this is back in the, mindset of, the service was my first job. Now I'm in the civilian sector, but, like, how do I navigate through all that and sell myself, effectively?
Mm-hmm.
That was where I was running into a lot of difficulty.
Were you expecting more?
I was, so that was where, motivation level, getting out was, super high, but it was more, you know, more stressful when it was like, like I had a lot of confidence doing this, but I'm not entirely sure anymore. I started having that feeling like,
Oh, start
oof,
questioning yourself.
right. And that was something that I'd never done before,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like being new guy on sub, it was never like, I can't do this. It's, I can't wait till I'm confident in how I do this.
Right.
It was, I
Right.
knew that I could, I'm new, whereas, the new mentality was starting to get to, a lot of self doubt, like, ooh, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe I made some bad calls here. Maybe, this isn't gonna, work out as well as I thought. And, just, that was where, and of course, then that starts to, balloon, because once you start feeling that, you get a potential, interview, something like that, and you go in there and you're doubting yourself. You're just like, "Meh, I'd really, I'm
Yeah.
not selling myself. I'm begging for work, like, and that
There's
was,
a difference for sure.
yeah, and that, that hurt a few things, that I, felt like I could have ended up having. And so it was, luckily, like, I was staying with, a guy I used to be in the Navy with, up there in College Station. He's like, hey, he's like, couch is yours, brother. Like, you know, get yourself, up, get out of this, and, so, there was a lot of opportunity there, um, with, like various factories, things like that. So I was working at a bucket factory for a little while, I was on the
Mm-hmm.
assembly line, and it's kind of wild. I did a, over there, as it was at Rudder, I think Rudder Theater is their theater there. I was a stage-hand for, when they put Mamma Mia on. Yeah, dude, I was,
Get out of here, man.
whatever the job was, man, I took it. I was working for, um,
Yeah.
I was working for two different staffing agencies. And so they would have assignments for me. One of them would give me stuff during the day. The other one would give me stuff at night. So I
Mm-hmm.
was, I would take, a day job where, I was, fire watch for, welders, whatever. And then at night I'd go work at this bucket factory, where I'd either be, running a forklift or, you know, putting gaskets in the, bucket
Mm-hmm.
lids, whatever, just so I could, it's like, all right, well, I'll get my foot in the door with somebody, keep getting a little bit of a paycheck,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of work from there, and
Dang, man. I can't believe that.
yeah. So
Um,
at A&M, okay, going back, just, oh yeah, I remember this now. I want to tell you. So they were building, the gas turbine plant for, to run, the power of the university and stuff like that. And I was there, and of course, like I said, I was a quality assurance supervisor for, damn submarine. Like, I reviewed countless piping diagrams. I knew all about, 1,000
mm-hmm.
different types of valves and stuff like that. But it's like, whatever, didn't mention any of that. So I'm there on fire watch. So I'm, half brain dead holding the fire extinguisher, just because that was, all that was needed. And I'm, working with this welder. I'm kind of looking around, and I notice, I'm like, hey, like this, I'm looking at the piping diagrams because I can't help but, but look, out of curiosity, trace the paths and stuff. And I'm like, I was like, this valve's put in backwards, like, I noticed this, right? Because,
Mm-hmm.
I can look at it and tell, okay, it's a check valve. This is going to completely stop flow. This system won't work at all. And so it's like, hey, like, it's like, I was like, I need to bring this up to somebody, You know, I was like, it's totally beyond the scope of what I'm doing, but
Right.
like somebody needs to know this, you know. And so the supervisor, you know, the superintendent, you know, I see him walking around, and they're usually, you know, super easy to tell, you know, nice shirt, you know, shiny white hat, right?
You've been around officers before, man.
Yeah.
Got a certain cut of their jib.
And so I see him over there, and you know, and of course, you know, I've got, you know, the you know, the reflective safety vest on, and you know, big
Right.
bright green hat, you know, like this guy doesn't know anything, look out for him, you know. I call him over there and I say, hey, you know, I was like, you know, I know this is, you know, way beyond, you know, my scope, you know, but I feel like there's a valve, you know, there's a check valve over here that's installed backward that's gonna, you know, stop, you know, it's gonna hinder the operations and possibly damage, you know, the chiller that it's attached to because it's not gonna get flow to it. And he just kind of looked at me like he's like, who the hell is this guy? Like,
Hmm.
you know, this day laborer comes over here and tells me
Yeah.
my engineers designed something wrong, you know, and my guys put something in wrong, you know. It's just, and he's like, who, you know, went to this long tirade, you know, he's like,
Oh, really? He didn't
yeah,
accept it.
no. He's like, you know, you don't know anything about anything, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just,
Really?
yeah. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, you know, let him go through it. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, I don't know anything about anything, but on the body of every check valve, there's an arrow that's printed on it that shows you which direction it flows. You can go take a look and tell me which direction that arrow is pointing, and then you know decide for yourself. And he walks over there, and I could just see it on his face. He's like, "That bastard was right," you know. And I was just, you know, and he's like, "How did you know this?" You know, we started talking, and you know,
Oh,
he's
so
like,
now he's not being an asshole.
"Yeah," and he's like, "Oh man, would you like to, you know?" And he starts kind of, you know, offering me a job, and that was where I was like, "No, no," like,
Because of his attitude?
yeah, like totally could have, you know, like. And I explained to him, I was like, you know, I used to review these all the time. You know, I went through, you know, a 6 month, you know, shipyard experience where, you know, I had to review 3,000 maintenance items. You know, I was a E5 going to meetings with E9s and, you know, O5s. You know, that
Mhm.
was, you know, how, you know, much time I dedicated to that I was, you know, trusted to, you know, hold on to that, you know, extremely superior role. I was like, but you know, if this is how you know treat somebody that you know that questions you, even when you know
Mhm.
like it's a simple like let's go take a look. Oh, you know, you're right. You know, something that simple, like I have no desire whatsoever to be attached to you, like in any
Wow.
shape or fashion. I'll
Wow.
keep looking, brother.
Man, that's interesting. That's powerful stuff, dude.
Yeah,
I don't know, you think that was the right choice?
I do. You know,
Okay.
because ultimately, if that's the culture, you know, like if you can't handle somebody saying, you know, because I look at that, I'll question if there's something that I feel like I need to question, brother, you're gonna hear it, you know.
I'm aware, man.
And it's not in any kind of. I try to make sure, you know, and this is where like another tactful, you know, improvement I've had to make over the years because before it was gruff, you know, it was like, nope, you're wrong, do it this way,
Mhm.
you know, but we had to be that direct, you know, and whereas now it's like, hey, like this is what you're thinking. What about this? You
Mhm.
know, if we can't, you know, I call that watch team backup, right? You know, you've heard me
Right.
say that before. You know, this is another possibility. What do you think? You know,
Mhm.
ultimately, you know, like decision ain't mine, you know, but at least we all have, you know, the
Mhm.
same, you know, every option's on the table, you know, to consider. And if I
Mhm.
think of it, you know, I forget stuff all the time. You know, I
Right.
loved it, you know, when, you know, guys would, you know, tell me like, hey, you know, you forgot about this. Like, thank you. You know,
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
know,
no one's perfect, man. No one's flawless.
yeah,
Like, it's not if you're gonna miss something, you are, dude. Like,
yeah. And
it's just the way it works, man.
yeah. And then, you know, so seeing that and feeling like, okay, that's the culture, you know, like this
Mhm.
guy thought he was untouchable, you know, and I just, hey, you know, like, it's not like I, you know, tried to come and tell him like, well, you guys are using 3/4 inch piping over here. I really feel like you need 1 inch. Like, Sure, and I'm not getting into that.
All
It's
right.
obvious to see, like, this thing's installed backwards. Like,
Oh man. That's
you know,
yeah, I get it, man. I'm like, yeah,
yeah.
why not,
So,
man? Do you want somebody to be a useful team member or not?
right, and I felt like, if I went that way, I'd be setting myself up for failure, either in, how I felt personally, because I would be, trying to like bite my tongue, like, "Oof, don't
Mm-hmm.
question, tallest blade gets cut first, kind of mentality,
Mm-hmm.
or, I wouldn't last long because I would be, kind of going against the grain, in that sense.
I found
So,
myself in that. I made a different choice when I was getting out of the military. I mean, I did almost 14 years on active duty, and so when I was getting out, I thought in my mind I was going to be in tech, right, and navigate this downtown Austin, and you know, wrongfully thought I would be able to pick which tech company is going to exit and go do, just a complete idiot.
oh man,
And it's like, dude, what was I thinking, right? And I didn't fit in, but I quickly found that I didn't fit into the culture of where I wanted to go. It's a position I wanted. It's everything I wanted, right? So I let myself convince me that some of those little things that I identified in the interview process may not be, I could overcome those, or they weren't, as significant as they were. It was difficult, man. And I think that's a lot of that's because I was bouncing around like you, right? It was that rejection. It's like, man, I never thought about dumbing down my resume. Um, Dude, I don't know, maybe that would have been the right thing, but I found myself not even getting interviews at like sales positions on a floor, right?
yeah,
Like they wouldn't even put me in like the entry level sales position. I'm like, what? I was national policy advisor for the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. I'm pretty sure I can go from selling members of Congress and everybody to like, a pair of boots.
yeah,
And I couldn't even get hired for that, man. Um, it's crazy. But then it was the opposite side. It was, I can't get hired for this. And I'm interviewing at VP positions in these companies, which I can't get because, they're looking for somebody with industry experience, or they don't want to take, to your point, they don't want to take that risk on you. And they're like, I mean, man, I feel like you're going to get bored in this position. And I'm like, let me worry about that. And they're protecting their company. I don't blame them for that. They're protecting their company. They don't want to hire the wrong guy.
yeah.
But I'm like, oh, I can't get that, and I can't get this entry level. Where do I fit, man? Like, where do I fit, right? So you go down that self doubt road, which is dangerous and tough for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Completely agree. That was where, it's like, man, I've got all these skills, but, give me a chance to show them to you.
yeah,
You know, if I'm applying for it, and I guess that's, the difference, because I felt like, if I'm applying for this, that means I accept, that this is
right.
the position, this is the pay, like I'm good with that. Like, come
Yeah,
on.
I'm interested for a reason.
Then I'm not wasting my time here, guys.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
yeah. So yeah, it was it was interesting. I've been in tons of positions that never would have thought possible. Never would have thought I would be in. A lot of
Hmm.
the work experience. And I love it. Like I'm very interested in seeing craftsmen do their jobs. So when I say that, I think back to when I was working at that bucket factory. Okay, those guys that were on those forklifts constantly. I mean, those things never stopped. And they were picking up. You know, I watched a guy. Use the blade of a excuse me, use the blade of a forklift to pick up a quarter off the ground. Just masters
Dang.
of the stuff that they did. They'd be come in there. They'd spray Pam on the forklift blades to give them a little bit of slickness, and then they just slide right underneath that cardboard pallet. Wasn't even on a wooden pallet with like
Hmm.
slots for the forks. Nope, just go in there and they just angle those blades just right, pick up that 5, 6 foot tall cardboard pallet full of bucket lids, not lose a single one. Be zooming. I'm just like, man, these guys are like superheroes at their at their craft. Like,
Dang, man.
I was like, just seeing, like true mastership of that kind of stuff. And I got to see that in a lot of different industries. So it was also you know interesting and informative for me.
Hmm.
Seeing how like blow mold injection works, and what they did to create different color patterns for like this is the pigments we mix to make like this color green for this customer's uh,
Hmm.
5 gallon oil whatever. And just seeing and experiencing all those different types of cultures and job professions, and seeing how those guys worked. I really did enjoy that part of it.
Hmm.
It was exhausting, don't get me wrong, especially when I was you know working one during the day, and then I'd take like a hour to like eat dinner, clean up, change clothes, go to the other one. you know that was luckily
How long did you do that for?
about a month and a half.
Man.
About a month and a half. And then
So
I got in with there's a pharmaceutical research building in College Station. I got in with the plumbers union there, and I was there. So like at that, they every trade has to dedicate. If they have 10 people, X amount of people means X amount of cleaning the site hours. So a
hmm.
lot of them would just farm out, the cleaning, pay, the minimum wage day labor to do their cleaning aspect. That way their trade guys could, focus on the trade. And, spend a lot of time with those guys and doing that. And that was a more long term, kind of
Hmm.
project. So I got to stay on with that. And they actually bumped me up a few times. I went from, just the, 7.25 an hour. They bumped me up, all the way to about 11, just because they,
That's pretty significant for that type of work.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Just because they, enjoyed me. I was working with them for, about a month or so, there.
Hmm.
And it was like, man, like, this covers it, what I need for, what I've got going on. So I'll
Hmm.
actually take some time and get some rest, in the evenings,
That
instead
makes
of,
sense.
like jumping and bouncing. Because my point that I needed to be at was somewhere about like 9.50, $10
Hmm.
for the obligations I had at the time. Didn't need
Hmm.
much, just was trying to make sure that I kept everything, kind of balanced and even keeled.
Hmm.
So,
And you
so
never thought about finance all that time. Took the oil
what?
field
Well,
downturn.
this was 2009, so remember finance was probably
Yeah.
having a pretty rough time.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
but
All
no,
right.
that
So what's next, man? Where are you going to carve your niche out in this industry?
it's a great question, man. Honestly, I do highly enjoy what I do. It's very rewarding. Being able to do the problem solving. Like you
Mhm.
discussed. Helping people out, and then seeing the satisfaction when they reach their end goal.
Mhm.
So I don't. I don't particularly. I don't think I know enough about the industry yet to know where I want to grow from here.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't know. Considered, like I said, as much as I like digging in the guidelines and stuff, like the possibility of me, maybe looking into underwriting might not be, that far off. If I wanted to, possibly switch, to the other side of the coin here.
When you're ready for a break, right?
Yeah,
I think you got a couple. I think you got a good 5, 10 years originating in you before you even have to worry about that, man. You're great
yeah,
at it.
absolutely.
You're great at it. So,
Thank
all right, buddy. That's it, my man.
you.
Great
Yeah,
talking to you.
you too, man. Always enjoy it, and especially, because like we have such similar backgrounds, and like I said,
Hmm.
the transition, and where does that kind of put us into, and going from there. It's always great to me to see, other people's perspectives and, how they handled it,
Mm.
because I don't know, I feel like I did all right, it's funny, but
You're where you are, man. Of course you did all right.
yeah, no, absolutely, like that's something that, I can always say, like, because I tend to, try to be reflective quite a bit. And I realize that, my life has had many, instances of, crossroad decisions, like this is where I decided to do something that completely changed the trajectory of my life. And I'm very happy with, where I'm at. I wouldn't change a thing, but it's still interesting to to me to, look back and think like, oh yeah, when I did this, that is where, the path shifted, deciding, even, like right now, like, thinking back, the, college station, like, deciding, like we talked about, that guy offered me a spot, and now, like, where would my life have ended up there? Not so much in the, the what if, as much as I just like identifying those points.
Yeah, what would have happened, right? Like,
Mhm.
what if I'm not a big what if guy, but it's always like, what would have happened if that, right? Not like romanticizing the what if, but
Mhm.
ooh, that might have been terrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
For me, it was always, did I make the right decision getting out? Right? Because I never
Yeah.
knew. Because to your point, if you'd have stayed, you'd have been on a roadmap. It's easy to draw the roadmap when you're successful at it.
Mhm.
And so then it's like, well, that's not the path for me, right? And I had a wife and kids, and so it was easy for me. There's always this pull though of, do I go try to do that? It's like I made my decision, man. I focus on my family. Anything that distracts from that is not the right path. But there's always that bit of ego and self-confidence. There's a fine line for me to keep balancing of self-confidence and ego, to see, is this for me? Is this for the family? Or is this because I need it to feed my ego that I can be successful, right? Or successful as I was. And so when you identify it, the sooner and faster you can identify it, the better. And similar to you, and I just didn't have an ego with all that stuff when I was getting out. And I fought it. I should say I fought it. I did have an ego,
Yeah.
but I recognized it, and I thought, man, I can't let this frustration overcome what I know needs to happen, which is why I was applying for entry level positions on things like, just give me a shot, right? Just give me a shot. And
Yeah.
then it doesn't happen. And you're like, okay, well, I mean, I remember in one interview, it's kind of, hey, you're way overqualified for this. What's the deal? you know, and it was, I don't have an ego and I need to provide for my family. And my wife has a job and was, making good money. I need to provide for my family. And I'm not attaching my past experience to what I can do. Just let me show you what I can do. I didn't get that job either, man.
Yeah.
I was
It's
like, okay.
Yeah, it's crushing. It's like, all right, well, like, hey, I want to learn from the ground up because that's what, I'm accustomed to.
That's how we learned, right?
So that's why, like, yeah, eventually, put me in a higher spot, but let me figure out the basics.
Yeah, let me provide some value, right? Let me provide value. But anyway, man, different conversation for a different day. So appreciate it. Talk to you soon, buddy.
Right on, man. Good talking
All
with
right.
you.
Yeah, you too, bud. Later.
Later.
All right. Hey, that was Dave Mackey, one of the loan officers at New American Funding, one of our veteran hires. We're always looking for veterans. If you are a veteran looking to make a change and join the finance industry, join us at New American Funding. You can reach me at david.spanton@nafinc.com. That's NAFINC.com. Shoot me an email. And as always, if you're looking to purchase or refinance, give me a ring. We'll walk you through the process and help you make the right decision for you. Have a great day.